This is Kat with the Kat Haas Outdoors Podcast. I'm so excited to share today's episode with you.
Okay. Jay, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been doing your podcast since about 2015, so to come on my little podcast that just started last month is an honor.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, it's hard to believe that my podcast is almost, well, I guess it is 10 years, 10 seasons. Started in 2015, and I'm excited to chat with you, and I appreciate you thinking of me and having me on. So we're gonna have some fun today.
I think so. I think so. So let's talk a little bit about how you got started in real estate. Because I know you started off in real estate. Um,
Yeah.
how did you get
I
started with that?
my dad has been a real estate agent for a long time. I think he's 40 some years, 45 years in the business. And always growing up, I could see his schedule of having quite a bit of time to, go to, whether sporting events or take us to school or this, that, and the other. So I liked the freedom that he had. I graduated from ASU in 1996, actually in the winter, mid season, if you will, mid semester. So it was like December, and I decided because of the schedule that I wanted to pursue real estate. And my dad had said, Jay, I think you need to do something outside with real estate. So I went into doing land. Primarily buying, selling land when I first started out. So I got my real estate license in 1997, and it's kind of hard to believe that, that's, whatever it is, 27, 28 years ago now. Um, I still consider myself a 27 or 28-year-old person, but I just turned 51. And I'm shocked every year. My wife says, every year you ask me how old you are, you don't even remember how old you are. And I said, well, it's not that I don't remember, it's maybe I just don't want to know and I don't want to remember, but I just turned 51. And it just seems like a blur, to be honest with you. Back when I started my real estate career, it just seems like yesterday. So time has really, just flown by. But now, yeah, I sit here 27, 28 years later and still do real estate today. And real estate is something that I love, and it has allowed me to do a lot of the other things with my outfitting business and, all of the things that I love to do with the outdoors. Really, real estate has kind of paved that way of, um, allowing me to do that, not only with time, but, with the good money that you can make with real estate and real estate investments and whatnot. It's just kind of afforded me the life that I have now. So super blessed and excited to be here.
And you also hunt a lot. How did you get started hunting? Did your dad hunt? Did you have uncles that took you out?
So it's kind of a fun story. I come from a ranching background, actually on both sides of my family, in southern Arizona and California, kind of in the San Joaquin Valley, and um, come from ranching family. So it's kind of a long story, but come from that kind of background of, a lot of my relatives are still to this day in the ranching business. And
Hmm.
um, when you're in a ranching family, you either have, people that just love to hunt, or they kind of think hunting is, kind of a waste of time when you could be, out pushing cows around and whatnot. And um, I mean, kind of a long story is, I started hunting, 14, 15 years old, started out with deer. I had some friends also here in Phoenix area that their dad took them hunting a lot. And so they would take me as a tag along, um, hunting trips, fishing trips. Their name was Meldy, Jason and Dave Meldy, and their dad was Mark Meldy. And they took me on a lot of hunting trips. And um, my I also had exposure to, uh, my dad was a ranch manager, in Colorado at a ranch. And so in the summers I would spend some time up there and got to hunt and fish. And um, I was a kid at a young age, uh, even before that, like first kindergarten, first grade, that my grandma, she would order Field and Stream magazines, Outdoor Life magazines, and I would always love to go to her house and read those. She would always have, the newest magazine. And as a kid, I would read those stories and I would mark the little corner of the magazine, trying to remember certain stories about like bass or trout or deer, whatever. And a lot of it I had never done, but I was learning. So I was reading and looking at the pictures and kind of as a kid dreaming about wanting to go hunting and fishing and do more of it. And, you know, as a kid for my birthdays, they would say, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And I say, "Take me to local lakes here, and just drop me and my friends off, and I just want to fish." So I always would go fishing. Over here in Phoenix, there's a McCormick Ranch Lake, just little urban lakes, and that's what I wanted to do. And me and my buddies, my parents would be there too, just watching us, obviously. But I mean, we'd be trying to catch bluegill and anything we could catch. And in the summer, sometimes we'd go to some of these lakes that are stocked with trout. And the crazy thing is, I would have my little tackle box, I would have my little Zebco 33. Like I was never catching anything, but I was adamant that I was going to be fishing. I would get up and be out there waiting, kind of like didn't know what I was doing, but I had read in the magazine, this is how you do it. And then I'd see these old timers, they'd launch their boat out and they'd go out for a couple hours and I'd still be sitting there on the dock or sitting there, and my bobber never moved or nothing. And then they'd come in and they'd pull up a stringer of fish. And I'm like, and I always saw them go in those boats, those little aluminum boats. And as a kid, I swore to myself, I said, if I ever make it where I can have enough money, I'm going to buy boats and I'm going to go fishing, and that's going to be me. And so, um, fast forward, I to this day own a couple of rafts. I love fly fishing specifically. And I, love my rafts and different rafts. I kind of have different rafts for different conditions and different waters that I fish. And so I think a little bit of being exposed to it, but also, almost having it where it was just out of reach made me want it even more.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting. I have friends that have kids, and some of them are gung ho about the outdoors and gung ho about hunting and fishing, and they've been exposed to it their whole life. And then I have some that have been exposed to it, and it's almost like part of me thinks that too much exposure made it where it was like too easy and it wasn't quite out of reach. Where I think everybody is human nature, but I think everybody needs those things that they're kind of striving for, and it's like a destination, and it's like that's what they're doing in their everyday life, but they're thinking about their next trip or something to reach for. Um, and so for me, being in the outdoors and hunting and fishing was always something that was just a little bit out of reach. Didn't get to quite do it as much as I wanted to, but then as I grew older, working at the golf courses, I loved golf also. But was able to buy my first car and have a little bit more independence. Then it allowed me to do some more fishing and hunting, and um, I was kind of off and running once I had my own wheels and whatnot. And I I had I played high school golf and college golf, and I had a lot of commitment with time with golf. And once that golf career was kind of over, it was the doors were really open for the outdoors, hunting and fishing, because I didn't have to practice near as much, and my time was a little more opened up.
Hmm.
And so that same period of time when I kind of quit golf is when I graduated from college and I started my real estate career and I started hunting and fishing. And together now for since late 90s, I've kind of been able to blend that lifestyle of work and play. And then with starting my outfitting business and whatnot, I started that because I love it. Um, and I want to do more of it, and I want to help people get the joy of the outdoors that I've had, and that's kind of what pushed me into starting an outfitting business. And anyway, it's all kind of come full circle, and yeah, I still do real estate to this day, and still enjoy the hunting and fishing every bit as much as I did when I was a kid. People, they say, do you get tired of it? And I mean, I think I'd be lying if I say there was times I wasn't tired of a certain animal. Like, you do 30 days of elk hunting, about day 30, you're kind of like, all right, I'm ready for deer season. And then you go through deer and you go through sheep season, you go through turkey season. It's nice because then in the summer you can also fish. So, if I had to elk hunt 12 months out of the year for 30 years, I probably wouldn't like it as much as I do. Or if I had to turkey hunt or got to turkey hunt every day for a year, you'd get sick of it. So that's one of the things I really like about the hunting and fishing lifestyle is there's so many different seasons, that you can kind of go through one. And then like right now, I'm just finishing with deer season in Mexico, and now I'm shifting to our turkey hunts down in Mexico. And so it allows my brain to kind of have something to keep going and keep looking for. That's a long answer to your question, but that's kind of where I'm at.
That's all right. Yeah, I know my husband gets to hunt a lot more than I do, having two kids.
Yeah.
And so, for him, he gets ready for antelope archery season, and then elk season opens up. And elk season always opens up either on or right before our wedding anniversary. And like the first couple of years he and his friend would go, they go on like a 10 to 14 day backpack trip, like
Hmm.
way out there.
Yep.
They're 7-8 miles from the truck,
Yep.
backpacked in. And his buddy asked him just recently, he's like, what do you do if you guys plan your elk trip around on your anniversary, like it overlaps? And he goes, we celebrate it later.
Yeah.
He's
He
like,
sounds like my kind of guy.
and he's like, and your wife doesn't care? And he's like, she knew what she was getting into. Like,
Yeah,
people
I
ask
hear
me
that a
that all the
lot.
time.
Yeah. I think you have I give buddies a hard time a lot about when they had kids, and it happens to be on the right around the opening day of deer season or turkey season or whatever it is, and I'm like, couldn't you have planned that a little bit better, and give them a hard time about it, but the reality is, we're all just loving what we're doing, living life, and a lot of those dates are obviously important, but it's nice if you find someone that knows that there's other things than just a date, and you can celebrate those dates sometimes early or late or whatnot, and still get the same effect. So yeah, I can relate to your husband though.
So let's talk a little bit about your hunting outfitting business. You said you started it in order to kind of share that joy. A lot of people talk about, when they shoot their first big buck or big bull and they get that adrenaline rush of, their hands are shaking, they can't sit still, and kind of buck fever. Do you still feel that when
Absolutely.
a client shoots like either their first bull ever or their first big buck?
Yeah, it's so doing it as long as I have, I always say if that joy goes away, I'm gonna quit. And it's so I have a great ability, and it's something I've learned over time, to be very calm in the moment of truth when it's other people, and when I'm sitting next to someone and I'm trying to get them dialed in on a bull elk out there at 350 yards, and they're excited and everybody's excited. I've learned how to kind of calm myself down so that it then allows them to be calmer, and that's something that I've had to learn over time. I don't know that I've calmed myself down as much as when it's my own hunt, um, but I love it as much today as I did when I started. And I think I even enjoy it even more when I have people that have either, shot a bunch of deer and it's their biggest buck ever, or it's their first, or, their biggest bull or their first archery bull. Um, I enjoy watching people get pleasure and enjoyment out of the outdoors, if that makes sense. So to me, it's about the experience. And doing, this, I just finished my 28th deer season in Mexico, and 28 years of doing anything that's a long time to do something. Um, but the passion of finding new properties and being able to monitor bucks through trail cameras and manage properties, and let deer grow from the year before, and then look forward to what size they are this year, and kind of the whole story behind the hunt and that particular animal. I love isolating certain animals and just be like, nicknaming them and being like, we're going to go after double dropper this year. And okay, now he's not as big as we thought. And, he's only a 4-year-old or he's only a 5-year-old. Let's let him go one more year. And kind of having these stories across the landscape of certain animals, whether it be a sheep, a big ram or elk or or whatnot. It to me, there's way more to hunting than just going out shooting something, processing it and going and eating it. There's a whole background on particular animals. I love kind of following. For 5 years, I was the ranch hunt manager there at the Ot 6 Ranch, which is not very far from where you're at, over by south of West Cliff, Colorado. Um, and it was fun because we ran 200 trail cameras, run them pretty much year round, and got to really follow certain bulls and kind of watch how they kind of traveled around the ranch during the season, during the summer. Got to see animals that, would move off the ranch and then come back during the rut. We got to see animals that stayed in a certain area their whole life and didn't move around. Certain personalities of bulls and even mule deer bucks, even bears and stuff that you would recognize, and just be able to learn from either observation, with our binos, or just spending time out in the field and then checking the trail cameras. To me, it you almost become, you have an intimate relationship and knowledge almost of those animals. And like, we could get where we could predict that, this bull is going to be up in the high country. As soon as the rut starts, he's going to move right down. The first place we're going to get a picture of him is in this pasture at this tank, and it's going to be approximately the 5th of September or whatever it may be. And we know that that bull only is going to rut cows in this certain area. And then, this bull over here, he bounces all over the ranch. Um, and then there's certain bulls that they just stay in one pocket and they only work one area. And then you'll have some bulls, regardless of their antler size, that, literally go on the whole 50,000 acres and go everywhere. So I don't even know where I was going with that. But my point, I guess, is I've enjoyed over the years the hunting, but I've enjoyed kind of what I learned from the animals and what they've been able to teach me through being able to monitor them. And then so it kind of comes full circle when we end up harvesting that animal, or even, we have these quote unquote hit lists of like, these are management, these are what I would call trophy. Like, we are going to go ahead and harvest this bull this year because he's reached a certain age, and he's gone 2-3 years without his antler characteristic getting any better. We think he's tapped out, like he might start going downhill. Once you've built that connection with those animals, sometimes then it's almost hard to even want to harvest them, because you feel like it's not that they're pets, but you have so much knowledge and intimate knowledge about their movements that you almost just get to really liking them. Like, please don't come out, just go somewhere else. Don't, it's, today isn't the day, and I'm kind of a softie as well on some of that stuff. But the more I kind of get to know them, the more story that it is. Sometimes it makes it more rewarding, and then sometimes, to be honest, it makes it a little hard to swallow because you've just gotten to enjoy watching them over the years.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that. My parents used to have a small farm back in Maryland, and we would set cameras out on it, and it was only like 7 acres, but nobody around us hunted.
Hmm.
So, we always had deer coming and going,
Sure.
and we would set up cameras all around the property, but also like facing some of the neighbors so that we could see like maybe what was passing just off
It's
of
fun.
just off of the
Super fun
property
to just
line.
monitor, right? It's
Hmm.
super fun to just watch and see what's happening and who's going where and what they're doing. And you almost get to where like you're cheering for them, like, you know, go run and hide.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, even my husband just came back from a scouting trip where he was pulling cards from cameras out here, just on public land. Um, and we sat down and we were going through every picture. We started recognizing the same bucks in
Yeah.
multiple photos, and we're like, okay, so that's that buck. Oh, he dropped his antlers on this day, and you can tell
Yeah.
from some other characteristic. And we're like, seems really early to be dropping antlers. It's kind of
Yeah.
weird. Maybe it was the
Yeah.
weather.
And putting all those pieces together is what's so fun and rewarding about the trail cameras to me. I know Arizona, some of the states have kind of put a ban on trail cameras, and I think it's unfortunate. I understand there's a lot of problems and issues when you're doing it on public land and you get guys going too far, but like for you and your husband, the joy of checking out these bucks and monitoring when they drop their antlers, when they're growing their antlers, how their antlers growing compared to last year and the year before. And I mean, building that story is what's so fun. And I hope Colorado doesn't do anything with trail cameras because I just think there's so many people like you guys just get a lot of joy out of it. So yeah, I hope that the ban kind of stays in Arizona and Utah and it doesn't just spread across the whole United States.
Yeah, and he put the cameras out after he had already filled his tag. So like he wasn't even actively hunting when he
Hmm.
put them out. And
Sure.
then obviously he'll probably pull them when the season starts.
Yeah, but it's
I think
fun
that's
just to monitor
the rule
animals.
in Colorado anyway, is that you have to pull them by a certain date.
Okay,
Um,
I wasn't aware that they had those yet, but
I think
um,
it's for public land, you have to pull them by a certain date.
mm,
And if you use like the cell cameras that text you the photos, you
yeah,
can't hunt within like 48 hours or something. So
yeah,
there's some rules in place, but it's not an all-out ban.
gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, that'll allow us to, it'll be interesting to see kind of how they grow. And I'm planning on getting a tag for that same area this year. So
Good.
I'm sitting there watching the pictures with him going, okay, what bucks am I willing to shoot and what bucks am I willing to let walk? There's
Hmm.
one that he's got like 4 or 5 points on one side, but the other side is just a fork, so a really tall fork. And I'm like, he's kind of funky looking. I'd probably shoot him just to get his genetics out of the gene pool.
Do everybody a favor.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Do you ever have animals like that on
Oh
any of
yeah.
your hunts where you're
Yes.
like, this one's just not quite genetically there?
Yeah, so we do a lot of that on our mule deer properties in Mexico. We have management bucks where, we try and have the bucks be at least 4 years old, so that we can tell, because sometimes before they're 4, it's kind of hard to tell whether they're just a young 2 point or 3x3 or whatnot. And so we try and have a little bit of age on them. And once, they get to that 4 year mark, and let's say that, they're 4 years old and they're spindly 3x3 or 2x2, or, some genetic where we think, they should already be a 4x4 by now. Um, and that's what we did at the ot 6 as well with the elk. We would um, try and get some age on them and then make the determination whether they were quote unquote a trophy bull or a management bull. And I think as trying to be good stewards of the land and try and take care of what God has given us. I think that management practice of trying to let bulls grow and get age on them, and try and get them to 8 years old or older. And in some states it's not very likely that they're going to get that old. But when you have private property, having the ability to kind of have a list of management stuff and quote unquote trophy stuff, and bulls that you want to let live and grow longer and see what they'll turn into, um, is, I think, it's almost a responsibility. It's almost something that we should do, as landowners. Obviously public hunting and whatnot on public land, it's really hard to mandate or to tell people what they can or can't shoot, because everyone hunts for different reasons, and so that's hard to mandate, if you will, on public land. But personally, as a hunter, anymore, I really don't have any interest in shooting something if it's not reached maturity. Example, in 2018, I had bought a hunt in the Northwest Territories, my first all sheep hunt. Went with Arctic Red, and me and my guide, we did, I think, 67 miles in 9 days. We moved every day. We were dropped in on airplane and moved every day with our camp on our back, and it was phenomenal. And I think we saw 19 rams, and they have a thing at Arctic Red where they want you to shoot 10-year-old rams or older. And we saw 19 rams. We saw a couple decent 8-year-old, one that we thought was maybe 9 years old, but none that were 10 years old. And so, I'd paid a good amount of money, but I decided, these rams are not what they have as a management plan. Now, they don't have a set rule that you can't shoot a ram unless it's 10. Um, but I was of the opinion that the rams we were seeing were not mature big rams, and I didn't get one. So and people say, well, do you regret going on the hunt? No, it's one of the funnest, best hunts I've ever been on. Uh, and I paid a lot of money to go hunt and not bring one home. I personally would rather pay the money and let a ram live for someone else to shoot than to just shoot one just to shoot one. Fortunately, I also had drawn crazy in 18. I had drawn a Dall sheep tag in Alaska in the Chugach, in one of the best units in Alaska, and was fortunate to go up there in August, a month and a half later, and killed an 11-year-old big, you know, beautiful ram, exactly what everybody looks for. So kind of came full circle on that. And but for me personally, I I've kind of reached the point where if I'm going to shoot, it's going to be something big, old, and gnarly, and kind of an old troll, and something we need to harvest because it's just past its prime or whatnot. um and I've the way I think doesn't mean that has to be for everybody, because everybody has kind of their own sense of maturity of their own hunting career and what they're doing. And there's people that have never killed an elk or a deer or anything. So, more power to you. If you're just trying to get an animal, I get it, whether it's a cow or a bull or um, so I don't ever want anyone to think that I'm trying to dictate what they should shoot. I'm just speaking about what I am. I've reached a point where I, want to shoot old, big, mature animals, and I'm willing to just go home without one. I don't care what I've paid for the tag. I don't need to just fill a tag to prove that I can shoot, or that to post a picture on Instagram or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure as a hunting outfitter who has, multiple private land properties and, put in management practices in place, you have a different kind of respect for outfitters that say, we try not to shoot anything that's less than a 10-year-old sheep, or,
Yeah, I mean,
anything
I think
less than whatever their management plan is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anytime you go hunt with someone else on their place, you need to respect the way they do it. And I think that when I come to your house and your rule is you take your shoes off before you come in, then I should take my shoes off. I think doing anything different would be kind of disrespectful. And I try and be respectful of you know all of the properties that we have in Mexico. They're all private properties, and every owner is different. And so, we try and be as respectful as we can to everybody around us, not only the hunters, the owners of the properties, and respectful of that's God's creation and God's animals, and He gave them. I believe He put them there for us to enjoy, and so I think we owe respect to them as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important all the way around, no matter what stage you're at in your own hunting career, is to always respect, um, everyone around you, and respect the animals themselves, that you're hunting and pursuing.
Yeah, I worked for a hunting outfitter for a short period of time. Um, and they had this rule that, when you paid for a whitetail buck hunt, they would give you a piece of paper that outlined, what size deer you were allowed to shoot. Not so much age wise, even though they said they preferred like 3.5 and older whitetail bucks, but like how many antlers they could have on each side. Not antlers, but how many points they could have, how
Sure.
big they needed to be. They needed to be outside the ears, even if, maybe they were 4 or 5 years old, but they were inside the ears and just really tall or a lot of mass. They wanted, outside the ears. The only like exception to that rule was kids. If it was a
Sure.
kid's first deer, he was like, shoot whatever you want.
Sure.
But that's what they preferred. And a lot of customers were like, well, what if I see some, there were not a lot of really huge bucks on some of these properties that they were hunting. So a lot of the time, customers would come up empty handed because either they didn't see anything or they didn't see something that was within those parameters.
Sure.
What would you say to customers that come on hunts that, maybe get upset that they didn't see the quality of animal they were looking for?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold. I mean, if the animals aren't there and the outfitter is saying that they are, and they're, in other words, kind of being misled, then obviously that's an outfitter that is not being forthcoming and not being, if you've got trophy standards, but there's not even those on the property, then it's kind of a problem. Now, if you have an outfitter that has those animals or is striving for those animals and knows that he has these certain restrictions, as long as those restrictions and those rules are given to the hunter ahead of time so they know what the rules are, then they chose to read the rules and go ahead and sign on the dotted line of the contract to say, yes, this is what I'm signing up for. That kind of the happy medium, I guess, of both is you like to, as an outfitter, be able to provide the visual experience of seeing some of those animals, or at least on trail cam, that that, hey, we're here. This buck might be nocturnal, but if you get a chance at him, here's what he looks like. But if he doesn't show up over the week's time during daylight hours or hunting hours, then that's one thing. But again, I think outfitters need to be upfront about what they have, and if they have those animals and they can make fairly strict management restrictions, then so be it, and it's their place. So I like a free market society where people have the right to choose to come. They have the right to take the data that was given to them and then decide, yes, I'm going to go forward and pay the money and I want to hunt there. And I think we all have heard stories of certain outfitters and outfits across the world that maybe kind of bend the truth, and so I think word gets around really quick about some of those guys. And um, I have outfitter friends and I have hunter friends, and I kind of see both sides of it. But I think as a hunter, if you're paying good money, you want to be able to at least see or have a chance at one of those animals and it doesn't always happen, and sometimes weather and moon and grazing conditions or drought, whatnot, plays a role in all of that, whether the antlers are smaller or bigger that year, or whether there's more animals here or more animals there, or if you got a stand location and you got assigned to stand number 9, and your buddy's over in stand number 3 and they're seeing all kinds of bucks and you're not seeing it. Sometimes that's just luck of the draw. But um, I think outfitters in general can do a better job of letting the hunters know exactly what to expect. And I do think outfitters need to be held to a certain standard of, there are expectations both on the outfitter side and the hunter side of how things should be. And then, I think on both sides as well, the hunters need to realize that sometimes outfitters, um, there's conditions that happen that don't allow the hunt to be as good as what obviously the outfitter wanted. And let's face it, I mean, you can't do every single hunt just be a bang up hunt unless it's like a high fence or something where you have so many controlled variables that it's really like shooting fish in a barrel sometimes. So,
Mhm.
free range wildland hunts sometimes don't go as planned. I think as an outfitter myself, the thing that we try and do is control the controllable variables as best we can, and then try and provide the best experience we can, and then let the rest sort itself out from there. And so as an outfitter for 28 years, that's what I try and do. I try and control what I can control, and I try and create expectations that are not false and give people a sense of what it's going to be like. For instance, like my turkey hunts, my Gould's turkey hunts in Mexico, we try and video a lot of the hunts. So when people are interested in a hunt, they say, you know, what's the hunt like? And I said, well, I can tell you about the hunt and I will, but I think the best thing is, go and look at, there's 350 videos on YouTube, and you can kind of see all the way back to, 2010 or something. You can see the different setups, the terrain, the way the birds work. And then to me, video is a great way to kind of portray what you're trying to sell.
Mhm.
Um, and then a lot of times they'll watch those videos and maybe they'll have some questions about this, that, or the other. And they'll say, hey, on that video, with so and so, and of course I'm like, well, if there's like 350 of them, I don't remember them all, but give me the person's name. Okay, yeah, I remember that hunt, and then they might have a question about, where we set up or how we did it or whatnot. But um, again, another long-winded answer, but I think hunters and outfitters both kind of share in that role of expectations and what should be provided and what should be expected.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I agree. As like I said, I worked at a hunting outfitter for a short period of time, and I worked the front desk, so I was fielding phone calls and scheduling
You heard
hunts, and
everything. You
I
heard the
heard
good, the bad, and the
everything.
ugly.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And having to then collect some of those people's information to give to the owner or one of the managers, the hunt manager or whatever.
Sure.
And they're like, well, hunting's hunting. It's called hunting, not killing, for a reason. But also at the same time, like, you as the hunt manager knew there
Right.
weren't big bucks there, or there was an
Right. So if you're
unrealistic
selling on false
expectation.
expectation, that can that will eventually catch up with you big time. And word of mouth is huge. And like any business, there's people that are truthful and there's people that are not truthful. And I think, with the internet, with all of the social media, with all of the different things, I think it's pretty hard to be a bad outfitter, honestly, and not um, get smelled out pretty quick by the public, which is good. I think for a consumer, it's good to make sure, that there are standards that should be, so people don't get taken advantage of.
No, absolutely. No, I agree. And like you said, those hunt outfitters that maybe don't meet the expectations of their clients, they pretty quickly get wind of it, and
Yeah.
either the
Now,
outfitter changes or they go under.
I will say too, dealing with as many people as I deal with every year between all of our different hunts for all the different animals, it it also, there's always two sides to every story, and it seems like the longer I do this with my real estate and the longer I do this with my outfitting, you really get to understand there's always two sides to every story. There's always multiple perspectives. And I've had my share of people that have a certain, thing that they think, and then I talk to my guides and get their perspective. And I don't want to come across at all saying that, the outfitter's wrong every time, because I've seen such situations in my business and other outfitter friends where I've heard certain things, and quite honestly, the hunter just was wrong, and the hunter didn't do it correct, didn't do something correctly, or didn't communicate correctly, or missed a shot, or did something that, you know, they want a refund or this, that, and the other. And certainly there's a lot of cases where that's warranted. And then there's certainly some cases where no, the outfitter needs to stand their ground and the hunter's in the wrong. So, I've seen it go both ways.
Well, and you answered one of my questions. One of my questions was going to be, do you guide all of your hunts yourself, or do you have guides? Do your guides that you bring on, do they specialize in one particular type of hunt, or do you get guides that maybe are a bit of a jack of all trades?
I have both. I have some that they just do deer hunts. I have some that just do turkey hunts, just do sheep hunts, and then I have some that do it all. So a lot of it depends on the individual, depends on their schedule, depends on their financial means of, they have other businesses, other jobs, they have day jobs. They only get 2 weeks off of vacation and they spend it guiding hunts. And then I've got guys that all they do is guide. So that's kind of, I you know I can only, when if recommendation for anyone out there starting a business is, when you start a business where you're the only one that can provide the service, if you're in the service industry, you can't ever scale that business, and you're going to have a hard time, probably making it profitable enough where you can do it with the amount of vigor and, like, energy that you should. So then you have to look at, okay, do I have people that work for me? And part of that is the people that work for you, you have a name and reputation that you've worked hard for. So are the people that are working for you whom you want to be representing you? And I think everybody, no matter what business you're in, when you have people working for you, there's always, some sort of thought or cringe moment where you're like, I really don't want this person acting this way in front of clients, because it directly affects what people think of me and my business and my reputation. So, you know, in any business, when you're trying to scale up and trying to grow a business, good quality people that are working for you is one of the most important things. Whether it's real estate business and you have, a bunch of sales people that are working below you and you're trying to mentor them and help them with their own career, but they're working for you, and when they show up to meet that client, like whether it's hunting or real estate or insurance business or dental hygienist, whatever it is, like, your name's on the door. And so everything that happens in that meeting, when you have that interaction with in that service business, it reflects upon you. So advice to anyone out there starting a business is make sure you have good people working for you. And the more people that are good quality people working for you, the better your business is going to be. And sometimes paying the lowest uh, amount of money is not a good business strategy. And sometimes paying people more, yeah, it doesn't make as much sense penciling out initially, but usually over the long term, it does. And so, those are a lot of lessons that I've learned and had to learn, sometimes more than once. with my real estate business, with my all my different businesses with outfitting and whatnot. But um, this our world is based around communication and so having people that can communicate well and be professional, are huge ingredients for success.
Absolutely. I remember when I joined the real estate brokerage that I'm with, which is just a small little boutique firm. We have 15, maybe 20 people total. They were like, you're welcome to put the company on your vehicle that you drive around. They're like, but we're not going to require it. And if you're a bad driver or you like speed a lot, you're swerving in and out of traffic, don't put our name on your vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of liability that runs when people are running around with, the broker's name on their vehicle and acting, they just cut someone off. All they have to do is, call the number and say, hey, I just watched license plate XYZ, flip a guy off and, road rage someone. Like that's a real quick way to get fired in a hurry. Um, if I might ask you a question, what kind of real estate are you trying to pursue, and what I love real estate and I love business, so I'm happy to give you any advice if you have questions. And there's certainly a lot of people that know a lot more than me, but I've kind of been around the block a few times. But I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on your real estate career.
So I started out in real estate. Most of my work is veterans, military, law enforcement. Our brokerage, which is Price and Co. Real Estate out of Denver, has a program called Foundations for the Front Lines. And Corey Popejoy is who started that. And he and I actually did an episode on it a couple of weeks ago, about how he kind of got started with that. And it's actually how he and I met, is that he was our agent to help us buy a house.
Yeah.
My husband was in the Army. That's how we ended up in Colorado and bought a house. And fortuitous uh, chain of events, I ended up working for him as his assistant, but also building my own brand as an agent. So a lot of my work is military, VA loans. Most of my clients have been military or somehow related to the military, DoD contractors and such. But I am branching into ranch and hunting land. Obviously, with my passion for the outdoors and my history with the outdoor industry, um, that way I can really bridge that that love and to be able to share it with other people to help them maybe find a piece of hunting land that has antelope on it all the time or turkeys or anything like that. So as I grow my real estate career, I do hope to branch more into that ranch and hunting land.
Sure. Well, I think with anything, um, when you're starting out and it, sometimes you can get I always tell people to be laser focused on what they're trying to accomplish and kind of go and say, where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? And then kind of reverse engineer it and work it backwards and say, okay, this is where I want to be in 20 years. How do I get there? Um, and, with any business, I think you can be, super focused on one thing and miss out on a lot of stuff that's maybe a wider spectrum. But then I think there's times when you do need to focus on just doing certain things that you're good at or that's a niche. And once you find that niche, really honing in and focusing on that. But I think as you're kind of learning where that niche may be, I think as a business owner in multiple businesses, sometimes you're so focused on this, you don't see this, and this area over here could be way better, but you kind of have your blinders on because you're busy and that's what you're doing. And so, you know, that's something I find myself, so my real estate career, I was acting as an agent for several years, and I started watching these guys buying properties in bulk and bringing in the water and the power and the phone and splitting the properties up and developing the properties and selling them off. And um, I had the fortune before I started real estate, I had 3 or 4 guys that I went and met with and picked their brain, and they all told me, they said, Jay, find a niche and work that niche and be the best at that niche, be better than anyone, know more about it than them, be more energetic, and beat everybody else to the punch. And so for me, after a couple of years of learning a specific area of residential land, I started realizing that if I could buy the property myself, if I could bring in the improvements, the water, power, and phone, and then I could sell off the improved lots, that I could make a lot more money than just selling it and making a commission. So well, there was one problem. I didn't have any money. So how do you buy anything without any money? That's a problem that most people have in any business they're starting, is they have these great ideas, but they don't have any money to start. And the one thing I can encourage people is there's always people out there with money, and they are looking for opportunities to make more money. So you can always, if you find the right deal, whether it be a great hunting lease or a great real estate deal, there's always people out there that you can partner with that have the money, where then you can make some profit, they can make some profit, and you can have a good relationship. In order to be successful when you're working with people, I feel like everybody in the chain needs to make money.
Mhm.
And taking it a step further, if you're being an agent and you've got a seller and you've got a buyer, and the buyer's not offering what the seller wants, there's always a give and take. And if everybody kind of feels like they win in a deal, they're more likely to do a deal together again. So whether you're, working with an investor and you're finding them properties, if there's a little carrot out there that you're going to make a bonus commission if it's a great deal and he turns it a year later and makes a profit, I would always tell you as a real estate agent, it's always nice to have clients that are willing to let you in on a piece of the action if things go well and you do what you say you're going to do, and you find them a great deal and they make a great profit. Because a lot of times they're smart enough to know that if they give Kat a little piece of the pie and they do well, that Kat's going to find them another property and they're going to make even more money, and then she's going to find them another property. And so, you know, starting out, I would recommend people find a niche and be as good at that niche, just like what I was told. Find a niche, be as good at that niche, know more about it than anyone. Go look at the properties, be very familiar with the inventory. I chose residential land starting out, and um, for the first couple of years, any property that was listed, I would go walk myself. I would walk the corners, and I noticed that most of the properties that I walked, there was no indication where the property corner was. So I swore to myself, if I ever was fortunate to have someone let me list their property, that I was going to mark them with 10-foot PVC poles with yellow or pink flags on the tips, and maybe even I would do a yellow corner, a pink corner, an orange corner, and a blue, so that when they looking at their flyer, they would say the yellow corner is northwest, the orange corner is southwest. So the people that came to look at the property would know where the corners of the properties are. So when I got my first listing, it's exactly what I did. I went out and marked it. First listing I got, the guy says, "You don't know much, do you?" I said, "Really, no, I don't know anything." I said, "But there won't be anyone that ever pulls up to this property that doesn't know what they're looking at. They'll be able to know each corner, and I promise you that info tube that's going to be on that sign will never be empty." How many times have you pulled up to a sign and you want to see the information and the info is empty? There's no info. So I swore to him. I said, "Listen, if you give me this 30-acre listing or 40, whatever it was, if you give me this listing, I promise you there's no one in this world that will market it better than me. I will have it where anyone that pulls up there can see each corner. I'll have places where they can stand on the property that are the best views so they can see the view corridors. I'll meet anyone at any hour. And so that's kind of how I did my real estate is I dove in and I wanted to be the guy that would answer every text, every call. Back then we didn't even have, I had a pager. That's how old I am. Um, they, you don't even know what a pager is. You're not old enough to even know what that is. But now everybody has a cell phone. Only the rich guys had cell phones when I started. So I was the one that said I'm going to be the guy that anytime I get a call, I'll say I'll meet you at the property. Are you there now? Wait right there. I'll be there. I'll show it to you. And so I kind of went after my real estate career trying to put myself in the shoes of the seller that I'm representing or the buyer that I'm representing. And if I'm working for a buyer, we're hunting. We are hunting for a good deal. We're looking at houses, we're looking at land, whatever buildings, whatever it might be, we're on the hunt. And that's one thing I love about real estate so much is there's so many different kinds of real estate, but if you have a buyer, you're in the game and you're a hunter and you go at it with everything you have. What I see happening is a lot of times it's easy, or it was easy for a long time, and people wouldn't even, they'd list a property, they wouldn't even go out and put a sign because they're like, why would I put a sign? I put it in MLS and I've got 5 offers on the first day.
Mhm.
And now that market's kind of slowed a little bit, now the better agents and the good real estate agents are rising to the top again because now it's not as easy as it was. So whether you're working for a seller or working for a buyer, you want to put your whole effort into that, and be the best you can be, um, to be the most successful. And I get pretty energetic and get pretty amped up when I talk about hunting and fishing and real estate. But the general consensus is, um, wake up every morning with a chip on your shoulder to be better than you were the day before, and to kind of, if you want to make a lot of money, make that a goal. If you want to, help a lot of people, make that a goal. If whatever it is, wake up every morning and say, this is what I'm going to do, how am I going to do it, and then go execute it.
Mhm. What would you say to people that maybe want to get into real estate, whether it's as an agent or as an investor, but maybe they're a little hesitant because the market has shifted in such a way that it has? And I'm obviously the market in Arizona is much different than the market
Sure.
in Colorado.
Real estate is all geographic. There are
Mhm.
times when it's global and nationally, real estate's hot or real estate's not. And I've seen kind of all spectrums. The reality is you have to start somewhere, and you have to know. And if you want to be a real estate agent and you haven't looked at every single house in your zip code, shame on you. If you want to sell houses and you haven't literally gone and looked, I don't care what house it is, I don't care what price range it is, but if you're selling in a zip code and you haven't gone into those houses, shame on you. You as an agent, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to people in general. You have to know your inventory. You have
Mhm.
people that are either going to want you to sell their house or you represent them as a buyer. You need to know what you're looking at. And the more that you know your inventory, whether it's a commercial building, whether it's homes, whether it's luxury homes, whether it's hunting properties, if you haven't gone and looked at all of the active properties, how do you expect anyone to say you're the credible person that I want representing me?
Mhm.
If you take a step back and go, no, if someone ever calls me on the phone, I can get them in the car and I can say, that has a big pole corral barn in the back. That has a covered parking lot. That has a sauna. That has a jacuzzi. I've been in that house. It has raised ceilings. It looks better from the outside, but it's not as good. Or this is a real diamond in the rough. I sold that house, or my friend sold that house. And you immediately gain credibility with whomever you're with because you have intimate knowledge of that market.
Mhm.
So for people starting out, I think you were kind of asking about market conditions where, in a situation where we are now and maybe things have softened up, or maybe they're gonna soften, or maybe the rates have come, up and it's kind of slowed and now rates are ticking back down. So they're gonna, nobody can predict real estate, as some can predict better than others, but no one can nail it exactly right. So what I encourage people to do is know your market, know your inventory, be credible, and answer your phone, answer your text, and be available. You can't be a real estate agent and put your phone on silent. You will never make it. It's a people business, it's a credibility business, and you have to put passion into. Think about if you wanted to buy something and you got in the car with someone and they said, "Well, we're looking for a house for 500,000 and we want to be in a guard gated community." And this is your area that you live in, and you've never even been in those communities. How
Mhm.
would you feel as a buyer having this buyer's agent that's never even been there? Or how would you feel if you got in the car and the buyer's agent said, "I've never sold one of these properties and I can't wait to, but I've been in every single subdivision in this area and I can't wait to go look at them. Let's go." Wouldn't you feel a whole lot better that, oh, this person's gung ho about, this subdivision and this subdivision and this subdivision? So there's no reason for anyone that's and want to be an investor or want to be a real estate agent not to go look at properties and have some sense of inventory. It's no different than hunting. If you haven't been out and looked, oh, the antler growth is really good this year, or it's not as good, or there's a lot of 4 points running around, or everything's a 2x2. If you don't know the inventory, how can you make an assessment on what is a good buck or a bad buck? You get
Mhm.
what I'm saying? So, um, again, know your inventory, communicate well, and be energetic and chase after, passionately whatever. If you're representing a buyer, chase, help them find what they're looking for, like your life depended on it. And you'll be wildly successful if you pour your passion into, knowing the inventory of the areas you want to work and being credible, and telling the truth and not being pushy, but being knowledgeable and answering your clients' questions. That's kind of the key to real estate.
Yeah, I've certainly been in situations where I've had a buyer interested in a specific property, and you go to call the listing agent to, get more information, ask questions, or, if they have multiple offers, what kind of offers do they have in hand, if they're allowed to disclose that information. And like the number of times I either get one word text messages back or one letter text messages back. No, come on
That's
now, pick up the
that's a
phone.
market that's been really good and really hot, and people are lazy, and those times will come and those times will go, and I've seen both. But over time, if you be the person that, is easy to reach on the phone and is knows the difference between a good deal and a bad deal, as far as being an investor, that's where knowing your market and knowing your inventory is huge. If you know a good deal when you see it, you can jump on it and you can go very aggressively and very hard. If you don't know because you've been lackadaisical with your research, you'll never be a successful investor. If you know exactly what you're looking for because you've looked at everything and you can walk in a house and go, "This is a deal. We need to buy this right now." Or you say, "This farm is a great deal because did you know we can actually split off the back 40 someone and put a new driveway and there's a whole new residence that can be put right here. So this is a great buy because we can give an added value and put in a whole nother, look how this sets up perfect for this house, and now it's a whole nother property." Whether you build it or you sell it and say, "Listen, if you buy this, you could live this, you could sell off this piece and lower your basis in this piece, and now it's worth more money because you improved the driveway, Now your basis in this property is less, your mortgage payment's going to be less, those kind of things. That's where knowing your market and knowing the target, knowing, you know, being the good hunter, being the prepared hunter pays off.
And I feel like too, a lot of it is reading your clients, because even if they tell you like this is what we're looking for, this is what we want, there's always something underlying that maybe they don't even know what they're looking for.
And that's why I think it's important to show people a lot of properties. Never show them the best. So my dad told me a long time ago, he said, when you go show people property, do not show them the best one first.
Mm-hmm.
Do not show them the best one first. Build up to it. Don't take what you think they want. Don't put something into their mind. Show them, build into it. Show them, listen. Don't tell them, I don't think you're going to like this. No, say, we're going to go look. You tell me what you like, what you don't like. You write that down and put it in your brain. They liked this, but they didn't like this. Okay, I think they're going to like the next one, but don't say, I think you're really going to like the next one. Go in the next one, they say, oh, we didn't like this, but we really like this. Now you're thinking, this third one we're going to, it hits all of their buttons. I know they're going to like this. That's when you can say, listen, I've kind of put this property last because I've been listening to what you're saying. I think you're really going to like this next property, but I'm curious what you guys think. And now you're going to what you think is their best property. And if you've been listening to them, more than likely they're going to walk in and they're going to be like, this is it, Kat. This is exactly what we wanted. And you're like, well, yeah, but I needed to show you some of these other dogs so that you realize that this was the prized, jewel, and let's get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important, is to kind of build into that when you're show some dogs so they realize there are dogs out there. And then, oh, this is so much better. But if you only go look at one property, it's really hard to tell what's good and what's not good.
Yeah, I've definitely had a couple of situations like that where I took a brand new client. It was my first day showing them houses, and we went to go look at, we had a whole list. We're going to go see like 5 houses that day. And they messaged me that morning before I left, and they're like, hey, I found this one that just came on the market. Is there any way we can go look at it while we're already out and about? Like, let me schedule a showing, make sure the time's available. But yeah, we can do that. Scheduled it. We were able to go. We looked at all these other houses. There was one house that we looked at. They actually kept an eye on it to see what it sold for. Because when we walked in after looking at the pictures online, we walked in and went, oh, this is not what the pictures show. Like, the house was in
Sure.
terrible condition. Somebody was living down in the basement and it smelled awful. They, we always tell our sellers, if we have showings scheduled, you never know if somebody's going to show up late or early. So leave, half an hour before their appointment time, give half an hour after the end of their appointment time in case they took a little bit longer to walk through, give a window on either
And
side.
that's a good point, because if someone's in the house and they're kind of really at the point where they're like, we kind of like this, and then all of a sudden the seller walks in, and then they almost like, oh, okay, we better go. Give them time, because sometimes that extra 10-15 minutes where the husband and wife are talking and they're like, yeah, this is it, this is it. Like, you don't want to interrupt that period. As well as if you're the agent, there's some times when you say, you know what, guys, I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to go over here. You guys spend some time with each other talking. I think you guys need your own time to just talk freely amongst yourselves. Uh, Let me back over here and give them a little bit of space so she can say, I don't know, or he can say, this is great, this is great. Sometimes they're not going to be themselves and be completely truthful or honest not that they're lying, but they're not going to let their true emotions come out if you're hovering over them. So that's some other advice I've found over the years is show them everything and then back away and say, you guys take your time. If you want to make another tour through here, go ahead. I'm going to be outside. Take your time. And then usually that's a great kind of way that whomever you're showing can then say their true feelings about the property. Then they a lot of times come out to you and say, Kat, we love this house. We got to make an offer. Let's go. And that's when then you take over and say, okay, let's go. What do you want to offer? And, do
Mhm.
that whole deal.
Yeah, and that kind of having the sellers there when we walked in walked in the door kind of like killed it, because then we saw,
It's awkward, isn't it?
it's awkward, but not to like judge a book by its cover, but sometimes you see who the sellers are, and it kind
Yeah.
of kills your feeling about the house, because maybe the house was, a renovation in progress,
Yeah.
and then you
I
see
always
who
tell
the
people
sellers are and they're just not
take your personal
great.
photos down, take your family photos down, take all of that stuff down. You don't want any preconceived notions of what went on in the house or who it was or anything like that, whether because I've shown so many houses where the people you're showing are not even looking at the houses, they're looking at the pictures up on the wall and they're totally distracted over stuff like that instead of like picturing where they would put their couch and how they would mount their TV and how they would do the master bathroom or whatever. A lot of times those personal photos and personal effects kind of get in the way um, of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or even I've had people say, especially in certain areas of Colorado, more of like the Denver metro, some of the cities, a lot of the time we're like, obviously take down family photos, take down anything personal, but also, take down any taxidermy.
Yeah. And sometimes hunters get offended by that. They're like, I'm not taking my animals down. Well, you may have the perfect buyer walk in and they cannot get out of their mind, the bull moose that's hanging in the master bedroom. And they're like, I can't ever see myself living here. Just take it down. It doesn't, you know, hunters, we know the type and, I get it, but it's like if you're trying to sell something, you want to be able to kind of um, appease everyone and
Mhm.
kind of not impose what you do on them. You want them to have an open mind and start picturing how they would set up the house. So don't put your personal, there's a time when you just get that out of there and try and appeal to the most buyers for sure.
Yeah, and obviously there are some properties where, it's okay to leave your taxidermy up, depending
Eh,
on the market and where you're
Depending on the market and the
located.
exactly and location, that actually might be a sales pitch of like, oh, there's a great place for the mounts. I didn't even think of that. My deer could go right there, and the elk, it fits perfectly. So, you know, I there's not a right or wrong in every situation. You got to kind of read the room and kind of figure out where you want to be. But certainly there are things that can be a distraction for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I know when we eventually get around to selling our personal home, all these guys behind me are going to get packed up, because one, they're special to me, but also somebody may consider this to be an extra bedroom, not an office, craft room, whatever. How we have it set up is specific and personal to us.
Sure.
I,
Yep.
I feel like a
Yep.
lot of sellers miss that. I've had a few sellers where like they just finished renovating and they just finished painting the house, but they picked the craziest colors, and you're like, why didn't you pick white or off-white or tan, something
Yeah.
neutral, if you knew you were gonna sell? Don't
Yeah.
go and paint the living room Barbie hot pink
Yeah.
to
And
sell.
that's the thing of people need to realize is that you need to be appealing to the masses and not specific. There's a time and place for you to be specific with your own home, but if you're going to paint before you go on the market, paint neutral, paints, go with the colors and themes that are very popular at the time, that you're not trying, you're trying to appeal to many people, not just one. And
Mhm.
if you're just appealing to one, that limits the amount of buyers that might potentially like your property. um, and also with renovations, any renovations that you do, keep in mind you want to appeal to the masses, not to just specific people, because then you limit your buyer pool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jay, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll have future discussions
It's
on
been,
real estate and hunting and everything.
absolutely, it's been fun, and I wish you the best of success in everything that you do. And happy that you're doing this podcast, and encourage you, have conversations with people, and you'll be so happy, and all of the joy of people listening, and being able to track your success, and it will just continue to grow. And um, I've had a pleasure talking to you today, and wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. Are you coming to the Mile High Game and Fish Show in Denver?
Nope, I'm not going to be there. I will be in Colorado though, May, June, July, and August. We spend a lot of time in the Roaring Fork Valley over there, um, kind of the Basalt Aspen area, and love to fish all summer. So I'll be around, and I appreciate you thinking of me, and having me on here, and love to come on again. Okay.
All right, sounds great.
All right. God bless. Take care.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you so much for joining me this week on the Kat Haas Outdoors Podcast, and I can't wait to chat with you all again. See you soon.